When my son died, his wife inherited the house and $30 million, then kicked me out, saying, "You're not welcome here anymore. Go die in the gutter." But a few days later, the lawyer chuckled and said, "Did you listen carefully to the will?" What was in the will caused my daughter-in-law to faint from shock. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The oak coffin shone under the overcast Pennsylvania sky, promising rain that had not arrived yet. 42 people stood around my son's grave, their dark attire making them look like shadows against the fresh spring turf. I clutched Landon's 5th grade school picture in my calloused hands, the corners worn smooth from decades of handling. My boy was gone, 48 years old, and the illness claimed him regardless. Brooke positioned herself at the head of the coffin, acting the sorrowful widow flawlessly. Her sleek black gown likely cost more than most attendees earned in a season. Those polished nails, lacquered in deep crimson, rested on the varnished surface as if she possessed it, as if she possessed it all. The pastor was midway through his sermon on everlasting peace when she stirred. Her stilettos tapped sharply on the gravestone path as she neared me. That rehearsed compassion etched on her features. "Kai," she murmured, yet loud enough for Mrs. Whitaker and the Hargroves to catch. Her impeccably groomed hand grazed my arm. "I hope you don't imagine you'll remain in my home after today." The statement struck like a splash of freezing rain. A few mourners fidgeted uneasily, feigning ignorance. But they had heard. All of them had. I squeezed Landon's photo harder, sensing my jaw clench. This was my son's residence. "Brooke, it was your son's home." Her tone dripped with that honeyed poison she had mastered. "Now it belongs to me." Landon bequeathed it all to his devoted spouse, Mrs. Whitaker inhaled sharply behind her lace glove. Harlan Brooks edged nearer, his rugged features tightening. These folks had known Landon since he was a toddler. They had seen him erect his building conglomerate from scratch. "We have not heard the will yet," I replied softly, holding my composure amid the blaze igniting within. Brooke actually snickered at my son's burial rite. What is there to hear? I am his spouse. To whom else would he grant millions? The pastor halted abruptly, visibly uneasy. Eyes were upon us now, some averting in mortification. This should have centered on Landon, on commemorating his legacy. Yet this lady was transforming it into her solo spectacle. The departed was a benevolent soul. The pastor pressed on, attempting to reclaim the ceremony, a cornerstone of our town who understood how to safeguard his kin. Brooke cut in, grinning at me with those icy azure gaze. His true kin. That is when it dawned on me. This stemmed not from sorrow or mere avarice. This was tactics. She had orchestrated this instant, selected this open venue where I could not retort as my instincts urged, where she could imprint her version before observers. The pastor concluded his benediction as soil started to tumble onto Landon's coffin. Each scoop seemed to fracture another fragment of my spirit. But Brooke's smug grin, that victorious curl as she observed my reaction, that seared into my recollection. She resumed her widow role, receiving sympathies from those who had known Landon from infancy, enacting the bereaved consort, while my authentic anguish was dismissed like outdated newsprint. As they descended my lad into Pennsylvania earth, I vowed to myself, whatever scheme Brooke believed she was orchestrating, she had chosen the incorrect adversary. The downpour commenced at last as the final spade struck earth, as the assembly scattered to their vehicles. I lingered. The groundskeepers had completed their task, and Landon's provisional headstone leaned askew in the new soil. I laid my lone crimson rose atop the heap, the identical bloom his mother had cultivated in our yard 40 years prior. Brooks' cackle echoed from yonder the burial ground, where she commanded a cluster of attendees, likely weaving her tale of the unfortunate widow's plight. The breeze tousled my silver locks, and rheumatism dispatched usual throbs through my fingers as I gazed at that school snapshot. Landon, at 9 years of age, with a toothy beam and unruly bangs that refused to settle. When had that vibrant youngster evolved into the gaunt figure I had visited in that Philadelphia medical facility? April 2024. Abramson Cancer Center. The odor of sterilizer failed to mask the dread permeating the ward. Landon had shed 35 pounds by then, his costly attire draping loosely on his diminishing build. The trial therapies proved ineffective, yet he persisted in battling, eternally battling. "Dad, I want you to know I secured things for you," he had uttered that afternoon, clasping my hand with digits frail as twigs. "No matter the outcome, you are safeguarded." I had not grasped it then, assumed he referred to term insurance, perhaps a nest egg. Landon had forever been dutiful, even young, hoarding coins in glass jars. But observing him endure those concluding months, I discerned another facet. Dread, not of demise. Landon feared little, but dread of departing matters unresolved, departing souls unguarded. The reminiscence receded 25 years back. Landon, at 28, positioned in what would emerge as his initial workspace, a leased nook above Harlan's supply depot with a makeshift desk and ambitions grander than Pennsylvania itself. "I will never endure poverty as we did, Dad," he had vowed, laboring 18-hour shifts to transform that $6,000 advance into reality, erecting neighborhoods spanning 4 districts, generating employment, delighting households in dwellings his firm assembled. Prosperity arrived swiftly once underway. Initial million at 38, 12 million by 43. But the toil ceased never. Landon propelled himself like a driven soul, pursuing an enigma I never fully comprehended. Perhaps pursuing shadows of welfare rations and donated garments, of witnessing his mother tally change at the market. The snapshot quivered in my gnarled grasp. That final lucid exchange in January, 4 days prior to the close. Landon's tone scarcely audible, yet his phrases keen with insistence. "She is not whom I believed. Dad, Brooke," I realized it belatedly. "Son, you are weary. The remedies, the testament. I ensured your security. Vow to me you will resist if required." I had vowed, unaware of the pledge, deemed it the drug's speaking or agony-inducing suspicion. Landon perished convinced I comprehended, and I had let him down in that ultimate juncture. Now positioned above his sepulchre while his consort reveled 50 paces distant. Those utterances felt prophetic. Wealth had not spared him. All those years amassing fortune, forfeiting vitality and moments and serenity, and the malady seized him nonetheless. The bitter twist scorched fiercer than Brooke's menaces. But Landon had been astute, astuter than his elder accorded him merit. Those concluding months amid contending for existence, he had contended for my existence also. I slipped the snapshot into my coat lining as Brooke's timbre wafted over the burial ground. "Well, it is time to address pragmatic concerns," she advanced with her cadre of observers, likely scheming further open debasement. My clasp firmed on that school image, sensing its yielding borders imprint my skin. Whatever Landon had devised, whatever safeguard he had pledged, I would require it presently. The precipitation fell heavier now, and Brooke's fashionable footwear would soil. Fine. Let her grapple with an element, even merely traversing damp lawn. The stones grated beneath my work boots as I proceeded to my vintage Chevrolet truck. Vehicle panels banged throughout the lot, motors igniting, individuals keen to flee the discomfiture Brooke had spawned at the tomb. She waylaid me midway to my conveyance, her elegant pumps clacking on the slick asphalt. "Mrs. Whitaker, Harlan from the local trust," and 4 additional grievers encompassed her like a panel she had convened. Calculated arrangement. I identified it from my military tenure. Kai, you must grasp actuality. Brooke stationed herself squarely in my route. Those frigid azure orbs fixed on mine. Landon bequeathed it all to me. The residence, the enterprise, the holdings, the entirety. Her assurance was unyielding. This lacked feint or delusion. She comprehended a secret the remainder ignored, and she relished the disclosure. I maintained my timbre even, as one does with skittish creatures. We have not heard the testament yet. Brooke, what is there to hear? I am his consort. Her mirth sliced keen as shards. Did you suppose he would grant millions to one who contributed naught to his triumph? The bystanders squirmed. Harlan cleared his larynx and examined his footwear. Mrs. Whitaker gripped her handbag firmer, evidently yearning elsewhere. But they endured. That formed the essence of this minor drama, forging attesters to her supremacy, solidifying the account ere any contested it. I comprehend this is difficult. She proceeded, inclining her head with honed empathy. But you cannot dwell in refusal. Landon cherished you. But he was pragmatic. He recognized I would require all to sustain the existence he forged for us. The malice astounded. Not solely the phrases, but the juncture, the open locale, the assembly she had summoned to witness my abasement. This lady had mastered affliction like scholars master formulas. Everything all right here. Kai Harlan Brooks neared from his aged Dodge direction, discerning the strain like atmospheric cues. At 70, Harlan retained the physique of the rancher he once was, with palms that could soothe a timid colt or halt a rampaging steer. 35 years of camaraderie had schooled him to spot peril, and Brooke embodied peril in elegant garb. Just addressing pragmatic affairs, Brooke stated, her vexation at the disruption flashing ere the facade realigned. Pragmatic affairs can await, Harlan uttered softly, situating himself marginally betwixt us. A man merits occasion to mourn his offspring. Of course he does. Brooke's grin sliced thin as a blade. That is precisely why I am extending to all an invitation to the residence for repast, a fitting tribute assembly. This was novel to me. Landon would have favored modest, serene, but Brooke was revising his chronicle instantaneously, portraying herself the bountiful entertainer rather than the scavenger rifling his remains. That appears delightful, Mrs. Whitaker remarked, patently eased to focus on normalcy. Landon would have valued that. The rest echoed accord, embracing the overture unquestioned. Brooke's grin broadened as she observed them conform, affirming her as the apt steward of Landon's remembrance. You will attend also, will you not? Kai, her inflection was velvet over iron. It is vital that kin be present. Kin, the term insulted, cloaked in civility, uttered before those who had known me ere Landon arrived. She challenged me to decline, to appear churlish and obstinate before the locality. Something feels amiss here, Harlan muttered. Advancing so solely I heard, his rural senses acuter than most acknowledged. But the others already veered to their autos, conversing on contributions they would bear, and how Landon would have relished the reunion. Brooke had commandeered my son's legacy, converting his obsequies into her enthronement. I shall encounter you at the residence, she declared, victory sparkling in those azure orbs. After all, it remains your son's dwelling presently. The stress on presently was intentional. Another minor malice dispensed with exactitude. She ascended into Landon's BMW, her BMW henceforth, and departed, spearheading the procession of grievers to what had served as my abode for the prior 4 years. I stood in the burial ground lot, deluge penetrating my coat, observing taillights vanish along the primary lane. The obsequies concluded, but another phase commenced. Harlan tarried beside his truck, motor humming yet unmoving. You enter, old companion. I glanced rearward at Landon's tomb once more, then mounted my truck. Whatever Brooke envisioned for this tribute assembly, I would not confront it solitary. The 20-minute trek to the residence resembled marching to conflict, which I presumed it was. Autos maneuvered into the looping entry successively, stones crunching beneath rubber as we reached the Fitzgerald clan abode. Brooke had preceded us. Naturally, her BMW stationed conspicuously by the entrance stairs. She materialized ere most had silenced their ignitions, abruptly vitalized in a manner that chilled my flesh. Please, all, enter for sustenance. Her timbre projected theatrically across the entry. I have arranged a befitting tribute for Landon. I alighted from Harlan's truck leisurely, my inflamed limbs objecting post the extended day. An anomaly pervaded this entire affair. We had not arranged any tribute assembly. Indeed, Landon would have despised such ado. Since when did she arrange a tribute? Harlan grumbled beneath his breath, synchronizing my stride to the dwelling. The Gothic estate appeared unaltered. Ivory pillars, encircling veranda, the twining ivy my departed spouse had sown 50 years ago. But Brooke loomed on those entry steps as if she dominated each stone and plank, which per yesterday's display, she likely did. Mrs. Whitaker arched her brows at me as we neared. Kai, dear, were you aware of this assembly, madame? This is fresh to me. Brooke overheard our discourse and directed that honed grin our way. I desired Landon's companions to possess a proper opportunity to recall him. Surely you do not oppose venerating your son's legacy. Her wording rendered any dissent egotistic. Astute lady, this daughter-in-law of mine, cunning as a peddler of elixirs, but astute. We processed into the abode I had termed home for 4 years, the site where Landon had entered the world, where his mother had perished, where 4 lineages of Fitzgerald males had resided and toiled and adored. Now it pertained to one who had known Landon under 2 years. That is when I observed the arrangement. Surfaces had been positioned in the salon, draped with ivory cloths I had never viewed. Fine porcelain was arrayed, not the routine wear, but the matrimonial ensemble that had been Landon's mother's. Crystal goblets shimmered beneath the pendant lamp, and lavish vials were uncorked and aerating. Such readiness transpired not in the interlude betwixt obsequies, and now, she orchestrated this, I murmured to Harlan as we suspended our outerwear in the entry foyer. Ere the obsequies concluded, he concurred, his rural gaze absorbing each particular. Observe those blooms, those lack market procured. Another procured these days past. Brooke glided through the chambers like an entertainer innate to the station, guiding individuals to the parlor, proffering beverages, debating the vintage assortment with command. Each motion proclaimed dominion, tenure, mastery. Please render yourselves at ease, she uttered, indicating Landon's preferred lounge, the hide lounger where he had passed his ultimate months when therapies rendered him too frail to labor. I shall fetch all libations. Harlan from the trust embraced a flute of crimson elixir that likely exceeded most households' fortnightly provisions. This manifests considerable thoughtfulness. Brooke, you readied all this presently. Landon invariably asserted hospitality mattered. She decanted herself a ample portion, her grasp firm as a clinician's. He would have desired his allies to recollect this day aptly. Recollect aptly, as if the obsequies sufficed not. As if she necessitated imprinting her tenure across Landon's legacy also. The entry chime resounded, slicing the hum of dialogue. Brooke's orbs illuminated promptly, and she virtually sprang to the portal. That must be Mr. Blackwell, she proclaimed to the chamber, her zeal scarcely restrained. Now we can address the official concerns. Harrison Blackwell entered, bearing his formal dossier satchel, his mind vocationally impartial, yet his gaze locating mine athwart the space. And flicker transpired there, a glance I could not fully decipher, but it accelerated my heartbeat. The authentic affair was poised to unfold. 28 individuals ensconced in the parlor, securing perches on divans, seats, and any viable locale. The ceremonial ambiance weighed dense as sepulchral atmosphere. Harrison Blackwell situated himself nigh the hearth, extracting formal parchments from his hide portfolio with adept swiftness. Brooke seized the high-backed seat nearest the solicitor, aligning her ebony frock and adjusting her bead strand. I claimed the edge perch by the casement, the locale where I had sat myriad evenings observing Landon labor at his console. I shall now proclaim the ultimate testament of Landon James Fitzgerald. Blackwell commenced, his timbre bearing the gravity of juridical command. The chamber hushed utterly, save the faint whisper of folios. Dated March 15th, 2024, attested and authenticated per Pennsylvania statute. Brooke's toe commenced drumming the Persian mat. Her digits rapped the seat limb. The lady could scarcely restrain herself. Blackwell advanced with the routine juridical parlance, affirmations of lucid intellect, annulment of prior testaments, designation of steward, tedious elements that prompted Mrs. Whitaker to fidget in her station, and Harlan to consult his chronometer. To my steadfast staff at Fitzgerald Builders, I bequeath 2 months extra remuneration to disperse evenly amongst all active personnel. Blackwell's timbre endured constant, vocational. To my kin Laura in Philadelphia, I bequeath my mother's adornments trove. To the Oak Ridge Community Archive, I bequeath $75,000 for refurbishment of the youth annex. Modest bequests, philanthropic offerings, intimate effects dispersed amid sundry relations. Conventional testament substance that rendered Brooke's impatience more evident each instant. When does he reach the vital segments, she uttered in a theatrical hush, audible to half the assembly. Blackwell cleared his passage and progressed to a fresh leaf. The chamber retained its unified exhalation. To my cherished consort, Brooke Elaine Fitzgerald, I bequeath the clan abode at 512 Oak Lane along with its furnishings and the sum of $30 million from my fiscal reserves. Brooke vaulted from her seat as if propelled. I knew it. I knew Landon tended to me adequately. The visitors' responses varied. Some proffered courteous grins. Others appeared uneasy with her zeal. Mrs. Whitaker swapped a significant regard with her partner. Even amid sorrow, certain societal limits most upheld. I clasped the seat limbs, sensing the timber texture indent my skin. 30 million plus the abode. Landon had been liberal with his consort. I would concede that. What have I cleared my passage, detesting the necessity to inquire? What do I obtain? Blackwell's orbs located mine athwart the space, and an exchange transpired, a glance conveying beyond utterances. To my sire, Kai Robert Fitzgerald, I bequeath all intimate relics, clan images, and his implements from the shed, the quiet elongated like syrup, implements and images. Post aiding erect Landon's dominion, post 4 years beneath this roof, post a lifespan of devotion and forfeiture, implements and images. Brooke's grin could have illuminated the district. She pivoted to confront the assembly like a sovereign addressing vassals, embracing felicitations from neighbors who had known Landon since swaddling. Landon forever asserted he would tend to me, she proclaimed, her timbre resounding with conquest. He proved such a considerate mate. Mrs. Whitaker inclined courteously. Well, dear, you are assuredly provisioned for existence henceforth. More than provisioned, Brooke's mirth bore jagged borders. I shall never fret over aught again. I persisted seated while she presided, observing this enactment with augmenting lucidity. This lady had never adored my son. She had viewed a sustenance source, an opulent mode, a legacy to claim. And Landon, ingenious Landon, had discerned it belatedly. But as the felicitations endured and goblets tinkled, Blackwell recaptured my regard. He was stowing his parchments, yet progressed languidly, purposefully, and upon our gazes meeting, he proffered the minutest inclination toward the scullery. "There exists one supplementary provision," he uttered softly, his phrases nigh submerged in the revelry. "But that demands confidential deliberation." Brooke occupied herself with a claim to observe, but I hearkened, and for the premier instance since the obsequies initiated, an element akin to optimism stirred in my bosom. The ceremonial proclamation concluded. But patently, the authentic affair commenced anew. Visitors transitioned from the parlor to the banquet zone. Lured by the lavish array Brooke had inexplicably readied, faceted goblets ensnared the vespertine luminescence streaming via lofty panes, and the sterling silver lustered on ivory drapes. This lacked hasty assembly in an afternoon. This orchestrated, Brooke elevated her goblet aloft, demanding heed like a maestro pre-orchestra, to Landon, who eternally tended those he cherished supremely. The sarcasm evaded me not, even if it eluded the other's cognizance. She had just claimed 30 million while I obtained a crate of implements and kin snapshots. Landon's notion of those he cherished supremely patently bore intriguing subtleties. "This elixir exceptional," observed Dr. Ellis, swirling the garnet fluid. "What year this?" "Brooke 2015. Napa Valley." Landon eternally asserted existence too brief for inferior vintages. She navigated the chamber with lithe poise, enacting entertainer as if innate to affluence. I desired his allies to recollect this day aptly. Mrs. Whitaker embraced a fragile, faceted flute, scrutinizing Brooke with novel intrigue. "You contrived all this presently, post-obsequies and all. When you adore another, you unearth fortitude." Brooke's grin flawless for lens. Landon would have desired his allies to exalt his existence, not merely lament his demise, exalt intriguing lexical selection for obsequial reception. Most termed these tribute rites. But Brooke resolved to recast Landon's demise as her individual conquest. "You know," she uttered, settling beside Mrs. Whitaker on the plush divan. "I have eternally yearned to contemporize this antique locale. Perhaps breach barriers, refurbish the pantry." Mrs. Whitaker's brows ascended marginally. "But it's such an antiquity. Dear, endured in the Fitzgerald line for 4 lineages. Well, hit my line now." Brooke's mirth chimed like fracturing crystal, and candidly, all this somber timber and ponderous fixtures feels so somber. I contemplate pale hues, modern fixtures. Perhaps demolish that barrier twixt pantry and banquet. My phalanges blanched encircling my goblet. This abode had pertained to our line since 1928. My grandsire erected those barriers with his palms, chose each ornament, schemed each chamber. Landon had been birthed in the upper dormitory, taken initial strides on these precise planks, but Brooke envisioned currency symbols and stylistic prospects. Harlan from the Trust inclined with vocational curiosity. Will you persist in Oak Ridge enduringly, or perchance contemplate relocation? Brooke's orbs illuminated like Yuletide dawn. Actually, I ponder vending and relocating someplace more urbane, perhaps Pittsburgh or even Chicago. The chamber silenced utterly. These individuals had known Landon his full span, observed him erect his venture here, generate labor for their progeny, bolster regional benefices. The notion of vending his clan abode to finance Brooke's metropolitan quest struck them like chill cascade. Landon cherished this abode, I uttered softly. He birthed here. Brooke pivoted toward me with staged astonishment, as if she had overlooked my presence. Landon deceased. Kai, time to exist for the extant. Deem you not? The facade disintegrated utterly then. No further bereaved widow, no further considerate entertainer, merely frigid reckoning enveloped in elegant attire. Besides, she advanced, warming to her motif. What utility retaining the gallery when you could possess millions liquid? I could voyage, procure a lofty suite, verily exist for the premier instance in years. Harlan neared me, his rugged visage firm as basalt. I sensed him restraining the impulse to utter aught that would eject us both. Mrs. Whitaker commenced assembling her satchel, patently uneasy with the discourse trajectory. Well, I ought to part home. Dawn morrow. Others emulated her cue, proffering courteous pretexts and veering to the portal. Within 25 minutes, Landon's tribute reception had vacated like vapor in gale. Folks who intended lingering all vesper abruptly recalled urgent duties. I endured in my edge perch, observing this departure with intrigue. Brooke had contrived to estrange Landon's full societal ring in solitary vesper. These individuals had arrived to venerate my son's legacy, and instead procured premier vantage to his widow's rapacity. By 9 o'clock, solely Harlan and I lingered. Brooke loomed in the abruptly serene banquet chamber, appraising the forsaken goblets and half-consumed hors d'oeuvres with bewilderment. Well, I presume individuals harbor occupied existences, she stated, but doubt flickered athwart her countenance for the premier instance all day. Harlan compressed my deltoid as he veered for the portal. Summon if you require aught, old companion, and I signify aught. The entry portal shut with a firm thud, abandoning Brooke and me solitary in the abode that had been my domicile for 4 years. She pivoted to confront me with revitalized assurance, patently eased to discard the open enactment. Finally, she uttered, discarding her lavish pumps. Now we can deliberate your circumstance aptly. Resonance of vehicle motors receded into remoteness, abandoning solely the talk of the long-case chronometer in the corridor. Brooke navigated the pantry like she had resided here lifelong, humming an unrecognized melody while she piled soiled ware with adept efficacy. Well, that progressed superior to anticipated, she stated, not troubling to regard me as she scraped residual hors d'oeuvres into the waste chute. Her baubles ensnared the ceiling gleam, gem studs that likely exceeded most's lunar encumbrance. I seated at the pantry board where I had partaken matutinal repast each dawn for 4 years, observing this enactment with escalating intrigue. The lady navigated with utter dominion, unfastening cupboards as if memorized their holdings, locating the premium cleansing agent sans quest. Brooke, we require deliberating subsequent occurrences. She pivoted not, merely persisted loading the rinse apparatus with automaton precision. Subsequent occurrences that simplistic sufficiently. When she ultimately confronted me, her mien had transmuted to firmer, more reckoning. The bereaved widow guise vanished entirely now, supplanted by frigid commercial efficacy. Next, you assemble your possessions and seek alternate lodging. The phrases impacted like corporeal strikes, despite anticipating them. This abode endured in my line for 5 lineages. Brooke pertained to your line. She snapped the linen with incisive stress. Now it juridically mine. Landon bequeathed me all. Recall my palms rested plain on the eroded timber board, constant despite the blaze amassing in my bosom. 4 lineages of Fitzgerald males had seated at this identical board, schemed their spans, partaken their sustenance, nurtured their progeny. Landon informed me you would struggle embracing actuality. She advanced, reclining against the ledge with limbs crossed. He asserted you had relied on him excessively long, that it unhealthy for an adult male to necessitate his offspring's aid at your span. My son uttered no such to me. Naturally, he did not. Her mirth sliced keen as fracturing crystal. He too courteous to wound your sentiments, but he confided ample. She propelled from the ledge, commencing to traverse the pantry like a barrister addressing panel. He asserted you had depended on him unduly, that it unhealthy for a mature man to require his son's sustenance at your age. Fabrications, each utterance forged toxin, but dispensed with such assurance that one ignorant of Landon might credit them. Behold, I comprehend. Alteration arduous for elders. Her timbre shifted to feigned empathy. But you require comprehending a foundational element here. I possess this abode now juridically, utterly. The title, the lien, the domain levies, all, the title may bear Landon's appellation, but this terrain pertained to my grandsire ere Landon birthed. Your grandsire bequeathed you naught. Did he? She halted her traversal to stare directly. Confront verities. Kai, you a benevolence instance who outlasted utility. The malice astounded, but what smote me supremely was her relish therein. This transcended property or currency. She savored my ostensible impotence like exquisite elixir. I desire you departed hence by dawn morrow, she uttered, her timbre ascending per phrase. And you shall bear solely what portable, no fixtures, no clan relics, naught pertaining to this abode. I arose gradually, my rheumatism rendering the motion measured and cautious. Morrow dawn, I, and deem not of asserting aught originally your clans. I harbor barristers, Kai, superior ones. They entangle you in tribunal until deceased. For the premier instance, since Landon's obsequies, I sensed an element akin to a grin tugging my labial edge. As you desire. Brooke. The unforeseen serenity in my timbre appeared to disconcert her. She had escalated toward eruption, anticipating fury or lacrimation or frantic entreaty. Instead, she obtained tranquil acquiescence. We transitioned from the pantry via the banquet chamber, past the rosewood board where Landon had executed his studies as youth, into the foreparlor where kin effigies garnished the overmantel. Brooke trailed me with rapacious vigor, patently invigorated by what she viewed as absolute triumph. I endured patience with you, Kai, but my patience bounds exist. She circuited the chamber, contacting fixtures proprietarily, the relic divan, the incised sideboards, even the copper fixture that had pertained to Landon's grandmother. This divan, these relics, even that grotesque kin effigy, all mine now. Landon selected each meticulously. I uttered softly, recalling how he expended months sourcing the precise low board to align his mother's aesthetic. Landon's palette as antiquated as yours. Her phalanges trailed exteriors like appraising wares. I contemplate sleek austere for the refit, perhaps Nordic, pure contours, pale hues, no disarray. She already effaced Landon's remembrance, scheming to eviscerate all linking this abode to its chronicle. Here subsequent occurrences. She advanced, pivoting to confront me with staged command. You bear your attire, your remedies, and depart. Naught else pertains to you. Where precisely do you anticipate my destination? She elevated shoulders, the motion nonchalant and ruinous. Not my concern. Elder hub. Mobile estate. Perchance that ally. What his appellation Harlan, perchance he permits slumber in his outbuilding. 68 years. Brooke, I resided in this district lifelong. Then you ought schemed superior for senescence. Her grin sliced keen. Perchance, if better sire. Landon bequeathed you substantive rather than crate of corroded implements. The assault on my bond with Landon penetrated profounder than prior utterances. But ere I retorted, she merely commenced. Landon exemplary offspring. He adored his kin. Sufficient. The utterance detonated from her with startling ferocity. I nauseated hearing of Landon and his marvelous kin and his treasured remembrances. Her guise not merely slipped, it pulverized utterly. He departed, and you know I gladdened. She bellowed now, her styled tresses loosening, her cosmetics blurred with ire. Now I finally exist sans feigning concern for this tedious locale, and tedious folk, and tedious kin customs. The confession suspended like fumes from blaze. She never adored Landon, never adored aught of the existence he erected, the locality he aided, the kin he treasured. Vanish from my vista, she snarled, her timbre descending to unadulterated toxin. Go perish in some drain where you pertain. Instead of the fury she patently anticipated. I sensed in proximity to serenity descend upon me. As you desire. Brooke. Her orbs expanded with bewilderment. What you not contest? Entreat. Enact some pitiable oration on kin fidelity, nay. I permitted myself a modest grin. I merely assemble my effects. You merely capitulate. She appeared verily astonished by my serene acquiescence. I esteem your desires. You, after all, the juridical proprietor of this abode. Why such, she quested the term so compliant. What utility contention I initiated toward the risers, progressing with measured decorum. You rendered your stance lucid. She endured in the parlor, observing me with distrust and bewilderment. This lacked the response she anticipated or craved, pulverizing another gratifying solely if they resisted. I require approximately an hour to assemble necessities. I uttered from the riser base, bear whatever accommodates in 3 valises. That suffices. That equitable. I ascended the risers leisurely, sensing her orbs drilling my dorsum. At the summit, I halted and glanced downward. Will you linger aloft to oversee I remain here? Attempt not astute, I chortled gently. Verily diverted, at my span. What possibly attempt as I vanished into the upper passage, I hearkened her traversing below, her pumps clacking on the solid timber. She obtained all desired, but an element of my response perturbed her. Fine, let her ponder. I departed the Fitzgerald abode at 7 in the morning, piloting my vintage Chevrolet truck with all possessions crammed into 3 weathered valises. The dawn breached the Pennsylvania skyline, tinting the firmament peach hue as I maneuvered into the lot of the Wayside Lodge on Interstate 80. 47 years in that Gothic estate. And it condensed to this, a 10-by-6 chamber reeking of chemical cleanser and stale tobacco. The synthetic counterpane rasped beneath my palms as I perched on the pallet edge, fixating on my solitary, unfurled valise. All I possess now. 4 attire alternates. My remedies. Landon's 5th grade school snapshot. And the fob chronometer that pertained to my sire. Not ample to manifest for 68 years' existence. But it must suffice. Freight lorries thundered by on the thoroughfare, quaking the frail barriers. Matutinal congestion amassed. Folk directing to labors, executing tasks, enacting routine existences, while mine inverted in 24-hour span. Landon, I addressed his snapshot. I trust you foresaw this dawn. The lodge's elixir brewer bubbled active, suffusing the diminutive chamber with scent of inferior grounds and mineral fluid. I seated at the minuscule board by the pane, observing flux while systematically appraising my plight. Destitute at 68. No revenue beyond pension. No kin remaining save a lady who directed me to perish in drain. But an irritation nagged me. Had nagged since yesterday's testament proclamation. Harrison Blackwell's significant regard when he eluded that supplementary provision. The manner he inclined toward the scullery amid the revelry. His vocational carriage, concealing an element akin to expectancy. Landon proved the astutest male I ever knew. Erected dominion from null, outwitted rivals double his magnitude, eternally preceded all by 4 strides. Was it verily feasible he abandoned his sire vulnerable to a lady he grew to mistrust? I located Blackwell's commerce card in my billfold and dialed his bureau numeral, my palms constant, intent supplanting the sorrow and disarray clouding cognition. Blackwell juridical aid, Harrison discoursing. Harrison. Itkai Fitzgerald. I require converse with you. His timbre transmuted promptly. Solicitude supplanting vocational courtesy. Kai. Where situated I hearkened. Brooke insisted you depart the abode instantaneously. She ejected me yesternight. Directed me to perish on refuse mound, amongst others. Keen inhalation, other terminus, she uttered. What you alluded supplementary provision in Landon's testament yesterday. I deem time we deliberated it. The intermission elongated sufficiently, I pondered disconnection. Then Blackwell's timbre returned, infused with an element remarkably akin to easement. Aye, it patently time. Can you behold me this morn? Can you attain my bureau, declare 11? I at the Wayside Lodge on Interstate 80. I attain in 15 minutes. Kai. Blackwell's timbre bore a gravity I could not fully identify. Bear all Brooke uttered to you yesternight. Each malicious phrase, each menace, each affront. Inscribe if required. Why what variance now? Because Landon foresaw precisely this plight. Contentment tinted his phrases now. Your offspring astuter than you knew. My heartbeat accelerated. What signify 11 a.m. precise? And Kai, you perchance desire bare attire alternate to locale. Something elegant for when we visit Brooke. The connection severed. Abandoning me, fixating the apparatus with the premier veridical optimism since Landon's affliction. Whatever my offspring devised, whatever safeguard he integrated into his testament, it poised for unveiling. I loved, donned my pristine tunic, and readied to unearth how adeptly Landon knew the lady he wed. I attained Blackwell's bureau precisely at 11, stationing my vintage truck beside his accustomed coupe. Central Oak Ridge appeared unaltered. Stone facades, national banners dangling slack in the static matutinal atmosphere, folk enacting their midweek affairs as if the cosmos shifted not beneath my soles. Blackwell's bureau occupied the third level of the antique trader's edifice. Timber-clad barriers arrayed with juridical tomes and kin snapshots. Landon's effigy suspended posterior the escritoire. A ceremonial capture from when he secured the district's Enterprise Vanguard accolade 4 years back. Kai, you appear fatigued. Blackwell arose from his escritoire, sincere solicitude creasing his rugged visage. How endure you at that lodge I endured superior lodgings. But I cope. I ensconced in the hide perch athwart his escritoire, noting how he appeared nigh invigorated despite the early juncture. You appear nigh elated over an element. Harrison, his grin broader than viewed since Landon's affliction. Kai, recount me. Did you hearken attentively every utterance of the testament proclamation yesterday? What signify Brooke obtained all, the abode, the currency, the venture. I obtained Landon's antiquated implements and kin snapshots. That what all deem they hearkened. Blackwell progressed to the bureau vault, rotating the cipher latch with adept deficiency, but oft the supremely vital utterances those folk disregard. He extracted a dense vellum dossier, managing it like treasured freight. Your offspring far astuter than Brooke ever envisioned. My heartbeat hastened as he arrayed the integral testament on his escritoire, leaves dispersed like itinerary to deliverance. Harrison. What withhold you, Landon knew precisely the sort of individual he wed. Blackwell's digit traced to the base of leaf 4. Behold here, segment 18C, the minutiae all overlooked. I inclined forth, peering at the juridical script. The phrases coalesced gradually, and upon comprehension, my cardiac nearly ceased. Proclaim it aloud. Kai. The abode and fiscal assets convey to my consort Brooke Elaine Fitzgerald. I halted, assimilating the subsequent clause. Upon stipulation that she furnishes apt tending and decorous lodging for my sire, Kai Robert Fitzgerald, until his innate demise. The chamber hushed, save the talk of Blackwell's escritoire chronometer. Persist perusing, he uttered softly. Should this stipulation breached via ejection, oral mistreatment, or lapse in furnishing deferential conduct, the full legacy forthwith reverts to the Landon Fitzgerald Malignancy Inquiry Endowment. My palms quivered now. Harrison, she ejected me, directed me to perish on refuse mound. I know she did. His contentment unmistakable because Landon foresaw this precise tableau. How possibly know what she uttered to me because your offspring directed me to oversee the plight keenly? He confided, Dad requires safeguard, and I absent to furnish it. Blackwell extracted another parchment, a juridical delineation folio. The testament explicitly delineates apt tending as decorous lodging, deferential conduct, and kin regard. Brooke breached all 3 stipulations within 40 hours. I sensed lacrimation amassing posterior my orbs. sorrow and easement and profound pride in my offspring's sagacity all amalgamating. Landon knew she enact this to me. He adored you profounder than his own ease. Kai. He uttered, Dad merits superior than I furnish while contending this malady, but I ensure he obtains required post my departure. The scope impacted like corporeal impact, while contending for existence. Landon contended for mine also. He discerned through Brooke's enactment, foresaw her malice, and erected juridical bulwark around me like citadel. What subsequent, I inquired, dabbing my orbs with the kerchief borne 45 years. Blackwell already assembled formal parchments, imprinting folios with his authenticator emblem. Now we apprise Mrs. Fitzgerald of her juridical plight, the legacy null and void as of yesternight. When apprise her this post-meridian, ready to confront her anew, I aligned my deltoids, sensing vigor return for the premiere in days. Landon's adoration yet safeguarded me, yet contended for me even from sepulchre. More ready than since this phantasm initiated, Blackwell and I expended the noontide preparing duplicates of the integral testament and juridical conveyance parchments. By 4 o'clock, we piloted toward the Fitzgerald clan abode in his coupe, formal parchments systematized in vellum dossiers on the posterior perch. The Gothic abode appeared altered somehow as we maneuvered into the looping entry, perchance because I now knew it pertained not verily to Brooke, had never pertained to her, despite yesterday's curtailed testament proclamation suggested. Blackwell tolled the entry chime while I stationed marginally posterior him, clasping the parchment dossier. The clack of pumps on solid timber heralded Brooke's advance. I anticipate none. She proclaimed through the portal, upon aperture. She materialized in leisurely attire, chic denim and satin chemise, her tresses in curlers as if readied for vespertine outing. The vista of me on what she deemed her threshold kindled prompt ire. What enact you here, I directed, you never return to this abode. Brooke, we bore you an intriguing element, I uttered serenely. Blackwell advanced with vocational command. Mrs. Fitzgerald, we require deliberate your mate's testament. Certain facets you perchance overlooked. The testament proclaimed yesterday, all resolved. You both intrude my domain. Actually, madam, you perchance desire peruse the integral parchment ere that assertion. Blackwell proffered the formal duplicate toward her. Multi-leaf, juridical stationery, embossed emblems, patently genuine juridical record. She seized it suspiciously. What this purported the integral rendition of Landon's ultimate testament. I retorted. Not the curtailed proclamation you hearkened yesterday. Brooke perused the initial 2 leaves, recognizing acquainted script on philanthropic bequests and intimate effects. Her bewilderment augmented as she located all aligning her recollection. This appears identical to prior proclamation. Persist perusing, Blackwell uttered softly. Leaf 4, segment 18C. I observed her visage keenly as she unearthed the segment, observed her mien transmute from bewilderment to incredulity to proximity. Panic. Her palms commenced quivering as she perused Landon's safeguard clause. This counterfeit. She shrieked the phrases, froth ejecting from her labials. This stipulation lacked in primal testament. Yesterday, you hearkened not the integral proclamation, I stated. You occupied with scheming your revelry. You forged this. You appended this segment post Landon perished. Blackwell's timbre endured vocationally serene. Madam, I assure this parchment utterly genuine, the primal in my bureau vault, attested and authenticated per Pennsylvania statute. I desire behold the primal, this deceit, this inconceivable. She scrutinized each leaf frantically, questing indications of meddling, modifications, ought to bolster her despair. But Blackwell meticulous. Each emblem genuine, each subscript verified, each juridical detail flawless, apt tending and lodging for my sire. She perused aloud. her timbre descending to susurrus as actuality penetrated her astound. You breached that stipulation circa 40 hours past. Blackwell apprised her when you ejected Mr. Fitzgerald and directed him, quote, perish on refuse mound. This cannot juridical. Must some error, some evasion. I advanced, sensing Landon's presence like tepid palm on my deltoid. No error. Brooke, my offspring knew precisely who you. She regarded betwixt Blackwell and me. Comprehension finally dawning in those frigid azure orbs. The reckoning, the scheming, the juridical snare. All laid months ere Landon perished. He orchestrated this. She sauceroused. He verily orchestrated this entirety. Perchance we deliberate the juridical ramifications interior. Blackwell proposed. This a residential quarter after all. Brooke inclined mechanically. Receding from the threshold. Aye. Enter. As we traversed the lineman into what had been my domicile for 4 years, I could not aid observing how swiftly the potency equilibrium shifted. Yesterday, Brooke righteous domain proprietor. Today, she poised to learn that proprietorship far more intricate than envisioned. We convened in the identical parlor where yesterday's testament proclamation transpired, but all felt altered now. Brooke subsided into the high-backed perch she had claimed as throne, while Blackwell and I assumed stations nigh Landon's effigy on the overmantel. Mrs. Fitzgerald, per segment 18C of your mate's testament, you breached the legacy stipulations. Blackwell's timbre bore the gravity of juridical conclusiveness. The full domain abode, and fiscal assets now conveys to the Landon Fitzgerald Malignancy Inquiry Endowment. This cannot transpiring. Brooke's timbre scarcely above susurrus, her palms veiling her visage. This cannot verily transpiring, by ejecting Mr. Fitzgerald and directing him to perish on refuse mound. You invalidated your legacy assertion. The testament explicitly mandates decorous conduct and deferential lodging. But I intended not literally. It merely, irate. Folk utter when irate. Blackwell consulted his juridical annotations. The parchment delineates that oral mistreatment constitutes grounds for legacy forfeiture. Intent irrelevant under Pennsylvania statute. I ensconced in Landon's favored lounger, the hide perch where he expended his ultimate months, too enfeebled from therapies to labor. The sarcasm evaded me not. Yesterday I destitute, today I domiciled. Now we require deliberate lodging dispositions. I uttered softly. Brooke elevated, bewilderment amalgamating with her despond. What signify this, yet the Fitzgerald clan abode? It eternally was. I gestured toward the kin effigies garnishing the overmantel. The endowment concurs, permitting me persist as perpetual denizen. Blackwell inclined. Affirmation. Mr. Fitzgerald granted lifelong tenancy entitlements as integral to the legacy conveyance. You can persist also. Brooke. But under my edicts now. What manner edicts her timbre diminutive, vanquished deference, rudimentary human decorum, and nevermore proposing any perish on refuse mound. I sustained my timbre, even sans vindictiveness, the identical courtesy I would have accorded you. What if I atone desperation infiltrated her timbre? What if I retract all I uttered? The juridical breach transpired already. Blackwell elucidated. The legacy conveyance irreversible under testament terms. I inclined forth, scrutinizing the lady who essayed annihilate me under 48 hours past. Landon knew this dawn arrive. He safeguarded both. Both. You obtain roof overhead and decorum. I obtain identical. The endowment furnishes subsistence allotments for both denizens. I contacted Landon's effigy tenderly. My offspring sagacious profounder than either realized. I forfeited all. Brooke's susurrus fractured, vanquished. All I schemed, all I envisioned. You forfeited all you assayed pilfer. I rectified. Distinction exists. Blackwell stowed his parchments adeptly. vocational contentment evident in his motions. I file the conveyance parchments dawn morrow. The endowment assumes juridical proprietorship by Monday. Landon bestowed me something profounder than currency. I uttered, aligning my offspring's effigy on the sideboard. Brooke elevated. With that purported equity and the cognizance he verily adored me. My timbre faltered marginally. He confided in the medical ward. Dad, I tended you. I comprehended not then. Your offspring expended months forging this safeguard. Blackwell appended. He foresaw precisely what might transpire and erected juridical bulwarks around it. As Blackwell readied to depart, I sensed profound fulfillment. Landon's adoration transcended demise itself, extending via juridical parchments to shield me when required supremely. Brooke, you can persist as long as adhere house edicts, I stated as Blackwell assembled his portfolio. Tend folk with deference. Contribute to domicile pacifically. Recall this domicile, not hostelry. She inclined numbly. What election I harbor, the identical election you accorded me 2 days past. But I not you. Blackwell clasped my palm at the entry portal. Equity served. Kai, Landon prideful. As his auto receded, I returned to the parlor where Brooke seated, fixating the barrier, for the premiere since Landon's demise. We solitary conjoint as peers, two souls reliant on identical benevolence, domiciling under identical roof, bound by circumstances neither alterable. We unearth manner coexist deferentially. I stated, I regret. She's so cerused about what I uttered about all. Regret commencement. Deference what signifies henceforth. The long case chronometer in the corridor told 5, denoting span and abode now pertaining to neither and both. Landon's ultimate bequest, not equity. Possibility atonement, even for those undeserving, exterior. Pennsylvania post-meridian luminescence streamed via panes my departed spouse selected, illuminating kin snapshots that endure on these barriers long post Brooke and I departed. The Fitzgerald clan abode endures, safeguarded by adoration extending beyond sepulchre. Certain conquests merit awaiting. As the sun set over the Fitzgerald home that evening, I reflected on the twists of fate. Jeffrey's clever will had not only protected our legacy, but taught us all about true family bonds. Brooke and I began a tentative peace, learning to share the space with mutual respect. Life moved forward, carrying his wisdom in every corner. What did you think of Kai's journey? Share your impressions in the comments below. What questions do you have about the story? Let's discuss and exchange thoughts together. Engage with the channel, like, and subscribe for more tales. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you.